Hello, BookTube. A little earlier today, I had the pleasant daily ritual of thinking up all the things that I wanted to talk with you about today, all the different videos that I wanted to make. Lots of fun. Uh, in the interval between then and now, today has turned into one of the darkest days in the history of the United States of America. And I just can't summon the will to overlook that and make that slate of happy laughing videos. I apologize for that, but I didn't want to refrain from talking to you at all today, and that led me to wonder what I could do that wouldn't tempt me simply to vent rage, just screaming, white-hot rage, the greatest amount of rage that I have ever felt in a lifetime of watching United States politics. The greatest amount of anger that I have ever felt towards an elected official, in this case the President of the United States, in my entire life. And the very first time in my entire life, a political life that I might remind you extends to 1968, no bed of roses year in American history. The very first time in my life that watching the U.S. news, I find myself wishing summary execution on hundreds of my fellow Americans, where if they were summarily executed in the streets, I wouldn't care, or I would approve. And that is corrosive, whether it's justified or not. And I recognize that, and I was trying to think of some way to talk to you today about books and authors and poking fun at each other, all the stuff that we love to do here in this little sanctuary that we've made for ourselves. And I couldn't really think of anything that would do that. I'm not even sure that I can make this video. I'm pretty sure that the only real antidote to the things I'm feeling, to the overthrow of my country, is just to go out walking in the woods with my little dog. After a few minutes, far from the paths out in the actual woods, after a few minutes of that, English will start to drop away. Frida, of course, doesn't have any idea that any of this is happening, so she's the perfect company for such a thing. I'm thinking that's probably the only thing I can really do. Unfortunately, those of you who are new to the channel, there are quite a few of you who are new to the channel. I write for a living, and one of the unfortunate things about it, I love it, I absolutely love it, but one of the unfortunate things about it is that I have work for which I have to be engaged. Quite a few people I know don't. Quite a few of you don't. You have work where you don't need to be personally engaged, and where your personal engagement with the outside world, pressures in your own life, tragedies in your own personal life, political news, whatever, can't possibly affect your work. If you're overseeing something, if you're managing a staff or something like that. Whereas when you're writing, it definitely can. There's a permeable membrane there. And unfortunately, I can't just take the night off. I can't do that. So I need to cleanse myself somehow. Otherwise, I'm going to write unusable prose for 4 hours. and nobody wants that. Literally, nobody wants that. So I think that's what I'll do. But before I do that, before I go away, and, let's be honest here. I know I was just gone for 10 days, but if this gets worse, the story that is unfolding in the United States news today, where the Capitol is under assault by Nazis and traitors, where it physically has been broached, where there are shots fired, where tear gas have been issued, where senators are sheltering in place, where all of it was done at the direct, immediate incitement of the sitting president of the United States, who said, there's the Capitol. I'm going to go over there. You should go too. Take it back. Don't be gentle. It's early in the day right now. It's possible that by sunset today, all of this will have blown over. It's also possible that it will have escalated enormously. The thing that I'm not seeing in any of the idiot mainstream news media commentary that I have made the mistake of watching so far is any acknowledgement that this could go out of control, that this could just be the beginning of this story, not the end of it. This isn't necessarily just one day's picnic, and then these people are peacefully rounded up and processed on minor civil violations, but that this might, depending on how the news goes in the next 24 hours, I might not make videos tomorrow. I might not be able to summon even the will to do this. But I do have an idea for what to do today. It feels ridiculous. It feels ridiculous to do. I'm not, no offense to you, of course. I'm so happy to have you here to talk to, but it feels ridiculous to talk about books when there are armed mobs in control of the capital of my country. Nevertheless, I'm going to try it today, and if I can't summon the will to do it tomorrow, then I won't. And I can't think of anything engaged to do today that wouldn't lead me down a path of just screamingly infuriated editorializing. That is obviously not why you come to this channel. Not here. I am not talking here. When I say not why you come to this channel, I am not talking here about anybody listening to my voice watching this channel now who might still support Donald Trump, who might still say, well, you know, he has some good points, to a man who just incited a mob to storm the capital of my country. I am not talking to those people. I trust none of those people are watching this. Instead, I'm talking about the editorializing just itself, unless it's done in a tone of fun, is not really why you come to this channel. So I don't know that I'll be able to avoid it, and I'm going to have to wait and see. The whole country is going to have to wait and see what these armed, flag-waving Nazis decide to do. In the meantime, I thought of one thing that I could maybe do today to maybe interest you, maybe divert you for a minute, and that is to read to you. I absolutely love reading to you. I don't know why I didn't do more of it. I sort of thought maybe I would do more of it in 2021. Just here, there, and everywhere. I don't have the reading voice that Sean the Book Maniac or that Olive at a Book Olive have. I don't have the reading skills, but I do love to do it. So I thought I would read to you just a bit. I've been rereading a book, a novel from 1961 that I love. I've praised it on this channel before. It's by Burke Boyce, and it's called Man from Mount Vernon. And oddly enough, it's a novel, and not a very big one either, about George Washington, who some of you, if you've been watching this channel for a length of time, will know I'm not his biggest fan. But fiction and nonfiction, I think this may be one of the best books ever written about him. And although it finds, Boyce finds an admirable figure here that I don't think really existed, I still like it. I think it's one of the most unjustly forgotten historical novels in American history. It was on my mind because I just recently reread The Killer Angels by Michael Shara, which is also brilliant. And it is constantly reprinted. And it was made into a miniseries, and it's assigned in schools. And this book has been forgotten. I don't think it ever even had a paperback edition. And it's every bit as good. Just on the line level, on the prose level, it's every bit as good. It's also every bit as thrilling. Takes Washington all the way through the Revolution. I thought I would read you just the way the book begins. I'll just read the beginning, just a couple of pages, because I want to see you, I want to talk to you, and this is the only non-committal thing that I can do, and then I'll shut up and we'll see how the rest of the week goes. So this is chapter number 1, and it's set in April of 1775. So we have prosperous Virginia planter and landowner and slave owner George Washington, who has yet to be called to any of the duties that will make him immortal. Has yet to be called to lead a country's defense. This takes place in April of 1775, and we are actually at Mount Vernon. We are on his estate. He had been in the saddle since pre-dawn at 4 o'clock, riding through the limpid gray and the sun's slow lifting, making the rounds of the fields on the home plantation, and the field hands and fishing wharf and sorting sheds, the young tobacco plants that stitched parallels in the long acres between fence rows, and the small, jaunty, sprouted wheat, seeing for himself the work in hand and what was likely to get done that day. The rounds were completed now, hours after reining at alternate trot and walk, and he turned the head of his chestnut mare toward the house. The sun was well above the horizon, sugary over the tidewater miles, a blob of honey, and a bountiful soundlessness ran on and on. The mare tossed her nose, playing at the bit, well knowing the custom of this daily ride. He patted her neck. There, Betsy, have your canter. It would be canter, not gallop. He prized his horses too much to gallop them unless needful. The spurs he wore on his big boots were seldom used. Slackening reins, he set himself practically for the mare's rollick, gather, and swing. At that moment, he caught sight of the poacher. The man was crouched on the near side of a rail fence, down a little slope toward the Dogue Run, the fence at his back and a weave of honeysuckle vines at either side of him. The man knew he'd been seen. He was gripping a fowling piece. A pressure of knees, a curt word, a tightening of leather brought Betsy to a halt, dancing. In the next moment he saw Jack. The young fellow, afoot, out for an idle after-breakfast ramble probably, stood something to the right of the poacher and partway down the slope, hesitating, obviously trying to decide between ordering the man off the place and the menace of the fowling piece and the poacher's snarl. The pair of them were checked, each on his spot, frozen as in a tableau, and desperateness spoke from one and irresolution from the other. Jack was his stepson, Jack Custis, turning 20. Jack would be unarmed, of course. So was he himself. To carry weapons on secure lands had for half a century been an absurdity. But one of his giant rages took hold of him. He felt it flaming up. Poaching was plain thievery. There were laws against it. This man was a sneak, a burglar of game, a petty killer caught and daring to threaten Jack. Betsy mare spun at his touch and he pricked spur for once, lengthening her to a rushing gallop down the slope. Her hooves drummed like quick heartbeats, guided and steadied by his balanced sureness that made the force of his body one with hers. Together they arrowed down at the poacher. The man faced them in a paralysis of disbelief, raising his gun, lowering again, and crouching deeper. The stubbled chin dropped, the mouth gaping. Betsy swept him past Jack. He heard the shout, "Papa, he'll shoot you!" He kept headlong on. Now he was at the poacher. He swerved to the side of him, pulling Betsy to her haunches. In the blur of his rage he had a glimpse of ugliness, made more ugly by a fumbling terror, a too-late franticness of thumb to find and cock the gun's hammer. Then his arm swooped, and his hand took the man by the slack of the shirt front like the plucking of a weed, and hoisted him off the ground, instinctively, without gritting or strain, for hand and arm could heave a folded camp tent 2 militiamen would have had struggle with. Another spur to Betsy, a surge to the fence, and the poacher was heaved and went sprawling over. He dropped like a live Indian from Betsy's back and vaulted over after him. The man had scrambled to his feet and run a few paces, and turned, and in a suddenness was straggle-legged, the fowling piece at his shoulder, hammer at cock. Instead of disbelief, his face read murder. Behind him, Jack's lungs emptied in a hoarse yell of sound. He scarcely heard it. He lunged forward. The trigger jerked. Hammer and flint plummeted to the firing pan. The pan power flared in a bloom of smoke. The aim was point blank, a yard away, trivial in his wild fury. The man, not the gun, was his object. He didn't slacken. The gun's charge failed. Damp from morning fogs or hastily tamped. No shot came, only a croak and curse from the poacher. The lunge took him rough against the man. He knocked aside the half-clubbed stock with a swipe of his left arm and sent his right fingers to a throat. His left fist smashed at jaw and cheek. His foot shot out in the frontiersman's wrestling trick that cuts an opponent's legs out from under him. The gun thudded to the ground and the man. The gun lay where it fell. The man tottered upright. His face was a soggy, pummeled bruise, and he grunted with pain. He made off, fast as he could, along the creek's muddy shallows, lurching and splashing water. Jack was at the other side of the fence, wide-eyed. "Papa," he said, and could seem to find nothing else to say, so that the morning became suddenly still again. He rolled himself back over the fence, and the scent of the first honeysuckle blooms roiled around him, and in his yet unquenched fire of anger he somehow resented the stillness. It was as though he were being looked upon by nature, looked upon and tested, and perhaps found savage and wanting. And that's how this book begins. Of course, Washington calms down after that, talks with his foster son, and we move on from there. But Boyce makes the uncanny choice here of showing us Washington undressed completely. Washington, the man, was prone to exactly that kind of towering rage. That is completely true. He fought against it his whole life, and only gave vent to it a couple of times that we know of. And in the couple of times that we know of, there are multiple accounts, not just his own, but multiple accounts from multiple different people who didn't know each other, all of whom describe it as literally awe-inspiring, something they had never seen before in a human being. And that detail about Washington's physical strength is also true. It isn't just folded camp tents that he could lift with ease. It was also piling beams that usually took a man at one end and a man at the other, and considerable strain. Washington could put 2 or 3 of those in a stack, put them athwart his shoulder, and carry them himself without any help and without any seeming strain. All of that is absolutely true, and those are also elemental factors. We don't get anything about ambition or politics or military strategy. Notice there's a complete lack of military strategy here. Washington doesn't think about the situation at all. Instead, we get the raw man, and I think that's a very good way to start the novel. Not only because it's thrilling. I don't know that my reading did it justice, but it is thrilling to read. But also because it plugs us right into a Washington who is, in this book, defrocked from all of the marble greatness that tends to encroach around him. Instead, that's all gone right away at the beginning of that chapter. We get that gets dispensed with. Whereas in a hagiography of Washington, the poacher would have been given a long and sententious lesson about the worth of respecting another man's property, and would have meekly handed over his fowling piece, right, to the saintly George Washington. In a hagiography, that's what would happen. Here, we get something very different. A man instead of a monument. And I think it works. I think it works really, really well. It's not the only thing it does, either. There are plenty of characters throughout this book who work really well. Martha Washington, the former Martha Custis, General Lee, General Gates especially. All of these figures from the American Revolution work so well, come alive so well in this book. I don't know what to say. I'm sure there are used copies if you're interested. If you want to read historical fiction about the Revolutionary period, you can't do better than this. But I wanted to read just that beginning, just because I don't think I've ever read from this book before. There's one other thing that definitely needs no introduction. I had emails from several of you that you hadn't seen Frida yet this year. There she is. There she is. Hello, baby. Hello, baby girl. She has all morning been... she's extremely smart. She's extremely smart. She's one of the smartest dogs I've ever had, and one of the most sensitive as well, despite how bossy and imperious she is. And she's been sensing all morning my anger. She knows perfectly well that it's not directed at her. She is going on 4 years old. I have never yet had occasion to direct real anger at her. We are more friends than anything else. She knows that she's immune. She knows that it's not directed at her, but it's still making her jumpy. So I think I really do owe her a nice, long, peaceful ramble in the country. So that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to do right now. Just a reading from a book, totally at random, just something I recently reread that I thought might interest you. Otherwise, it would just be angry venting, and I don't want to subject you to that. So I'm gonna wrap this up for now, and I apologize ahead of time if I can't make videos tomorrow. If the capital of my country is still under occupation by Nazis tomorrow, which I think is at least 70% likely, or either that or that there's been rivers of bloodshed, senators killed in the capital. If one of those two things is true tomorrow, then I don't see how I can make videos about books. As much as I love them, I don't see how I can do that. But we shall see. I'm going to keep an eye on the news. I'm going to try not to let it absorb me because I have work to do. But first, before work, before news, before anything, first, grass, rocks, trees, dog talk. So I'm going to wrap this up. But I'll be back. Thank you very much, BookTube, for putting up with me today. I'll see you soon.